And we are live once again. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our channel once again. My name is Alita. You are watching this on the channel, excuse me if I can talk, Legalbytes, where we explain the law one bite at a time. And so I have with me today, once again, I have Nate the lawyer.
Hey.
Say hi, Nate.
Hey, hello everyone. How's everybody doing out there today?
So how have you been?
I've been all right. Your picture is not coming up on the stream, but I've been fine. It's just um I had a friend give me some bad news this week, so it's been
Oh, I'm
I don't know.
sorry to hear that.
It's one of those things. The best man at my wedding. He was diagnosed with cancer, so now it's just like so it's been a kind of like one of those gut punches because it's someone who's about my age, and it's like, it's just, I don't know, it's a little scary. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you guys not able to see me for some reason?
No, you're not on cam. Well, on the stream, you're not on cam. And in the chat though, in here, I can see you on camera, but outside on the thing, you're not on camera.
How do I fix that? Do you know how to fix
I don't know. Maybe toggle your camera again.
I guess. Okay. I guess I can unplug and then replug. I don't know.
No. Turn your camera.
Or maybe turn it off
and then turn it back on. Hold on. When you turn it off, let me see what happens. Turn your camera off.
Okay.
I'm seeing what happens on the stream.
So it's off.
Now that pops up. So your camera's just not being recognized.
Ew, that's not good.
But even in here though.
The audio is though, right?
Yeah, the audio. Well, I hear your audio.
Oh, okay.
But one thing though, even in StreamYard, your picture and everything is very pixelated. It seems like you.
This is. Oh, you know what? Oh, hold on. Let me see if maybe it could be my connectivity. Hang on, just 1 second here. Sorry, guys.
Maybe lower your bandwidth. All right, now you're on screen.
I am. Okay, good. Okay, because I was on the Wi-Fi and now I'm connected through the Ethernet cable. Hooray. Okay. All right. Here we are. So I'm really sorry to hear that about your friend. That sucks.
Yeah. It's one of those things. Getting old, it is.
Yeah, I know. It's as we start to get older, friends of ours and family members and whatnot, and sometimes us ourselves, we start to have more and more issues, related to our health, and so it kind of drives home the need to appreciate our health when we do have it, because I mean that's always the thing, right? Is that like when things are going great, you don't think to stop and appreciate it necessarily, and it's only like I remember as a kid growing up, it was always like the day after I was like violently ill with the flu or something. And I just felt awful. And like the next day that I would get up, I would be like, wow, an average normal day feels wonderful. This is fantastic. Like I should be very happy about this. But it's easy to take that for granted when you've had a good long, thread of time without any issues.
That's true. So. Yeah. The last time I was violently ill was when I took the vaccine. So now I'm feeling better. Not the Well, yeah, it was when I took the vaccine.
The second shot, right?
Yeah, the second shot
me
was
too.
When it threw me off. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a good 24 hours of just feeling awful.
Yeah. But I'm happy I got it because I don't have all those problems with work and I can go eat at a restaurant. Like here in New York, it's like, no vax, no nothing.
Yeah. True. So I'm really happy to see a lot of people in the chat. Hello, good morning, everyone. So I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you're having a good Saturday, and it'll be interesting to see who can come for this live stream, since it's on a Saturday morning as opposed to a work morning. Because I've gotten some comments on some of our live streams that it's usually Thursday morning at like 10 or 11 a.m. that some people are like, well, I'm at work, I can't catch it live. So I'm really happy to see a bunch of people here so far, and we'll see how this one goes. So do you have any fun weekend plans?
No, I'm just gonna go hopefully visit my friend today, probably this afternoon, and just probably get something to eat or something with the fam. Because I'll say this, I think a lot of people don't realize how much they work during the week, but it's really crazy. Like my kids, have to get up at 6 o'clock and then come home by 4, and then they go do homework. So, I like to make the weekends a little more interesting for the family, because it's that during that week, sometimes you just got to get that stress release. And I think if you don't have it, then you go to the next week even more tired. So, but we'll see. It's nothing too elaborate. Just maybe going to the park or something like that.
Yeah, well, that sounds good. Yeah, no, my husband and I think I may have told you about this before, but my husband and I are always in a long disagreement about the MCU. I'm a fan. I love it. I love all the comic book stuff. And he is a little bit, I guess, just weary of it. Like he's a little tired of the continued thread that he's like, all right, enough superhero movies. Let's get back to, like he says like real cinema, like he's part of that group of people that says, the MCU is not, they're movies, but they're not real cinema and whatnot. So anyway, so we've gotten into many disagreements about the MCU, and because he's very opinionated about it. But he decided that he wanted to try doing a movie marathon of the MCU to see if he could stand it. And so he wants to do it with me starting this weekend, and starting from the very first one that came out, because he's seen like the first phase, I guess you could say. He's seen those movies, and then he stopped watching after Winter Soldier. So anyway, so we're probably going to be live tweeting that on Twitter while we do it, just to see his reactions, and he'll probably have a lot of funny snarky reactions.
Winter Soldier was pretty good though. The first Captain America I didn't like. I liked Winter Soldier. I thought Winter Soldier was all right.
Yeah, no, Winter Soldier was fantastic. I think it's probably one of the best MCU movies. Yeah. But I think he just I think he said that was his favorite. But then after that, he was done. Like after he saw more Marvel movies coming out, he was like, all right, like enough of that. So, but for whatever reason, he decided that he wanted to test it out and do an experiment, I guess, to see how far he can get into the MCU and see if he actually maybe has a different take on it.
I don't know. It's interesting because I think all the movies are watchable, right? I'm not saying all the movies are as good as, because there are some that are better than others. Right. But it all depends on what you're watching it for. Like I loved all the MCU stuff. I'm missing like the new, what's the next one? The one with the 10 rings. I didn't see that one yet.
Oh yeah. I haven't seen that yet either.
Yeah. And there's like another one going to be coming out. So I don't know. The newer stuff I may not be up on. And let's not forget that we're talking about 10 years worth of movies, right? Because this was a whole, a long, so if he's trying to get engrossed in that's a lot of hours. That's a lot of hours. We're talking about like 20 movies or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. So we're gonna spread it out, maybe do like one per weekend or something. So this may take us a whole year to do, but but we'll see. But yeah, I mean it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. I mean, just like my when we visited back in the States this summer, and I took him to Disneyland for the first time, it was a very interesting thing to see a man in his 30s go to Disneyland for the first time without any kids or anything, and see what his reaction was. Because I have all the nostalgia of having been there as a kid, growing up in Southern California. So for me, it's one of my happy places, But for him, he was like, it's kind of weird seeing that there's a Pinocchio, but I know that that's a real person dancing inside that costume. Like that is an adult. He's like, it's weird to me that they're like waving at people and like pretending to be something that they're not. He's like, I don't understand it. But he's like, but whatever, to each their own, I guess.
That's the mass marketing of today. That's what it's about. That's the way they make their money. It's funny. Now I can't wait to get back to Disney.
Yeah.
But I will say this though. For all those people who like the MCU, I'm watching What If, and I'll say this: they have steered right into I hate to say it, into the woke train, and I do want to say I appreciate diversity in MCU, Disney, all that stuff. I do appreciate it, but I just don't want to shove down my throat, and I think Disney's trying to do it in a way where it doesn't shove it down your throat, but now it's interesting because I always like the woke characters that at the end of the movie I didn't know it was woke. Somebody like, that was so woke. I was like, wow, the story was just so good, I just didn't realize it. But I think Disney is starting to lose that because in some of their characters, they did have that. They did have that with the Captain Marvel, even though everybody kind of knew it was woke. But when you watch the movie, you're like, okay, it's not a bad. The movie's not a woke movie. It's a movie about a character, an established character, and going forth and going forth. So I'm just hoping. It seems like I know it's going to be harder for the writers to write these woke stories in a way that's still appealing, but I don't know. I'm hoping they'll do a better job than, for instance, what they did with He-Man, because He-Man was horrible. But we'll see.
I haven't seen it, but I heard there was a lot of backlash on He-Man. An interesting one to look at right now that is wading very well in those waters in a very interesting way is on Apple TV Plus, Morning Show. Have you seen that or
I haven't seen Morning Show.
It's all about the Matt Lauer issue. Like, it's basically like the first season really kind of trails everything that happened with Matt Lauer, and his downfall and the Me Too movement and all that kind of stuff. And it's interesting because you would totally expect a TV show like that to go full woke, and it doesn't. And especially in season 2, like it's actually like they really write these characters in a very human kind of way. Like Steve Carell's character, like he's kind of that Matt Lauer sort of guy.
Yeah.
Like they actually like portray him in a very human way, in a way that is, I think, very much more powerful and much more satisfying than if they had gone like full woke on a show like that. So that's an example of a TV show that a lot of writers could look to right now for how to really balance, like, yes, there are serious issues that are being looked at. And yes, we should be examining those, and even through our art, you could say, but at the same time, going full woke is maybe not necessarily the best way to go about it. And having and deciding to have that kind of restraint actually leads to having a much more compelling narrative, much more compelling characters, and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I do think it's a lack of imagination in writing too, because if you think about it, the rules now are they're kind of blatant, but I think nobody's ever just listed them out. Like me and my wife were joking, because every time we watch a movie now, we're like checking the woke boxes, like, oh, LGBT check, Asian check, black check. So we check the boxes. Yeah. But one thing I've started to realize is that because that's the thing with the woke brand, is that you don't want the story to suffer to push a narrative. You'd rather have the narrative be interwoven with the story to make it all. But when you start checking the woke boxes, it's like the rules are always changing, but they're there. For instance, if the character is black, then that black character can only be played by another black character. So if you have a story with a black lead, Jesse Jackson or something, it can only be played by a black character. Same thing for Hispanic, but for LGBT, it's kind of like possible, preferred, but not likely. But then if you reverse it and say, well, what about white characters? Can black people play white characters? Yes. So white characters can be played by other minorities, but other minorities can't be played by white people. But then that also translates to, let's go to the next level down. Well, if it's a black character, you can't have it played by a Hispanic person. Remember there was the outrage over Zoe Saldana, and she was playing, I forget the name of the famous black actress she was playing. And there was like this big uproar about it, because they were like, well, you can't find a black actress to play this black character. So it's like all these specific rules about who can play what, how they can play, I think it makes the art suffer, because instead of letting the art, like for me, I don't care. Acting is acting in terms of, we want people to be able to play these other characters. And I do understand the history of blackface and all that. But at a point, we were starting to get ridiculous with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I also think that it was ridiculous that Julia Roberts was going to play Harriet Tubman, right? I'm like, okay, that's gone too far, right? That's ridiculous.
When did that happen? When was Julia Roberts going to be playing?
Yeah, so for the Harriet Tubman movie, one of the producers was like, hey, Julia Roberts would make a great Harriet Tubman. I'm like, okay, that's ridiculous. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that's what I'm talking about. There are examples of things going too far, But then
Yeah.
I understand, mixing it up a little bit. So we'll see.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. And I remember what was the Lin-Manuel Miranda movie that came out recently, In the Heights?
It
There was a
wasn't
lot
woke
of
enough.
yeah. Yeah, which I mean, it was all about not Cuban community, Puerto Rican, right?
Yes.
In New York, and about their community, their culture and everything. And they were like, well, the only people that were of darker skin tones, they were all backup dancers. None of them were featured characters, none of them were highlighted characters. And so there was backlash about it, but it's like you can never satisfy everyone. That's the end of it, right? Because there will always inevitably be someone who says, "Well, what about me? I'm in a particular box and I was not represented by this box."
Yeah, but the thing is that I think, like, I thought when that happened, I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was brilliant. I was like, wow, this woke movie. This movie was a woke movie, and it wasn't woke enough. By somebody who's promoting wokeness. His whole career is about being woke and diversity, and his movie wasn't woke enough for them. It's like, what more do you watch? This is a super woke guy producing a movie for wokeness, and it wasn't. So I think that's what I'm talking about, because if I'm looking at movies just counting those boxes, then I can't enjoy the movie, because I got boxes to check before I can sit down and say, okay, this is a good movie. And do we really want our art to be? Because that's really racism driving the art, right? Well, if there's a black character, I don't like it just because of that reason. Then what are we really talking about? I shared the story of Julia Roberts and Harriet Tubman.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, see, Julia Roberts, Harriet Tubman was a racist idea, but quite common in Hollywood.
Wow, that's nuts. That was an actual thing.
Yeah, like this is ridiculous. Like I would assume people would assume this was ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
but then yeah. But again, there's levels to the game, right? This is levels to the game. So
yeah, well, of course, because there's a certain level of currency that you get from different boxes that are checked. So and the more boxes that a specific individual checks, the more they can have a certain currency and being able to have a certain amount of social power, you could say. So yeah.
But I also think, just to the last point on this, but I also think you do want more diversity. You do want to give more opportunities to minority characters and so forth and so forth. You do want to spread out the wealth. I understand that. Now I know that the claims of them, the Jewish community is saying, well, these famous Jewish characters should be played by people of the Jewish faith. Like, like now it's like, where are we getting to this? Where are we going to go? Because acting is inherently me pretending to be somebody else.
Right.
Now, if I have to be the same race, the same thing, the soon we're going to just say, well, why isn't this guy playing himself? It's like, are we getting to that point? Because then there's no such thing as acting anymore.
Right. And I completely agree, because I completely agree, because inherently, the definition of acting is that you are pretending to be something that you are not, right? Because there are so many astronaut movies played by actors that have never been in space. So many, like otherwise, if we really want to be that literal about it, we can't have any kind of science fiction, because no one, to my knowledge, has ever been a wizard or a vampire or a mermaid. Like no one knows their lived experiences.
Mermaid rights.
Or a merman.
Whatever happened to the merman? The merman is really the person who's, from now on, we only refer to them as mermen. Not mermaids, or got too much class.
Mer people.
Mercs.
Yeah, exactly. So here's we do have one super chat that I want to make sure that I get here. Tatted Jedi, thank you for your super chat, Tatted Jedi.
Oh, Tatted's here. What's going on, Tatted?
So he said, who's Nate's favorite TGR host he has met?
That's the Geek Room, and it is Tatted. He has a lot of tattoos. Yeah, it's good to see you, Tad.
Nice.
Oh my god,
So
we just met up. We just met up here in New York, so it was pretty cool.
Oh, cool. So can you explain what is the Geek Room?
Oh, it's a show the Geek Room is a show here on YouTube, and it's about games, and it's essentially about games, current events, things that happen in our community, in our little online community. So it's a really fun show. I played, like, one time we played Among Us. You'll see movie reviews. You'll see reviews of other things that go on in the community. So it's a great
sounds
channel.
100% up my alley.
Yeah. It's a fun show. So I watch them.
All right. Well, I'm gonna have to check them out. Alrighty, cool. Well, 20 minutes in, let's talk about some law, right?
Okay. Hey, do we want to go over executive privilege, or because that seems to be the hot new topic today?
Yeah, well, that, and I mean, I'm really interested in these two subjects that we have today, because especially particularly in context with one another, because we've got the Trump lawsuit against Twitter, and the title I wrote that it's Trump's new Twitter lawsuit, but actually in looking back at the articles that I read about it, I'm not entirely sure that this is a new lawsuit. This may just be a new filing in a previous lawsuit that he has against Twitter, asking to reinstate him back to Twitter, get his account back. So he has filed for a he's asked the court to force Twitter to put him back on. He says that the reasons why they took him down are inconsistent with their practices, and they go against free speech, et cetera, et cetera. So there's that, and then we've got the Facebook whistleblower. And I know that we're gonna cut this off sharply at 1 hour, because you and I both have to leave after an hour. But those two, I feel like, are very interesting to put them in context with one another, because a lot of the things that Frances Haugen, the Facebook whistleblower, that she said in her 60 Minutes interview and in her testimony to the Senate this week are a little bit different. I feel like if those are true, now we're talking about two different companies, obviously, but very similar policies, similar kind of moves that they make. It could possibly harm Trump's arguments here.
First, the lawsuit to put him back on Twitter. Let's just, I'm just gonna break. If there's any Trump supporters in here, get ready for a reality check. It's probably a loser. It's, right. I'm saying it's like 90% lose, just ridiculous, right? The reason why is because in the United States, we have the freedom of association. So Twitter as a private company, not a public company, as a private company, can determine who it associates with. So just because they allow you to get a Twitter account, they can say, well, we don't want to associate with this person anymore. And by them saying we don't want to associate with this person anymore, they have a constitutional right to not associate with someone, or to associate with someone, just like you do. Most of the people in this chat have that same right. If someone wants to come to your house, you can say, I want to exclude you from my house. I want to exclude you from my private property. Now, I understand the free speech argument, but you don't have free speech on Twitter. That's something that people just don't understand. You have free speech against the government. So whenever you hear, and I know there's a lot of lawyers that say, oh, Twitter's violate my free speech rights. Those are people who generally don't know what they're talking about, or are trying to mislead you in some way. There is no free speech against Twitter. So Twitter now, there are policies and things that Twitter, obviously for Section 230's exemption, that they have to adhere to, but even those are extremely blurred, because again, they have the constitutional right to exclude people if they want. Now, obviously, they can't exclude you for things like race, gender, and so forth. Those are things that they can't say were protected. But I would even go as far as to say, if they were, let's say if Twitter created another website and didn't care about Section 230, there are some websites that would exclude Black, like for instance, some Christian websites exclude atheists, some leftist websites exclude Black people, some Jewish websites exclude everybody who's not Jewish. That, I believe, is something, it just shows you how on the internet, you can have these exclusionary practices and it be lawful, because as private citizens, you can exclude whoever you want. Go ahead, Alita. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and something that's really important to remember with regard to Section 230 is the fact that it's written right into that section there. I think Section 3C, I can't remember, but the meat and the potatoes of that section say that they can moderate and have protection from liability even on cases that are alleging constitutional claims. So claims for racial discrimination, gender discrimination, religious discrimination, all of those things are also cases that can't be brought against social media companies or website providers or internet providers because of Section 230. It explicitly, like, that's a very strong protection that they have for constitutional grounds.
Now, also, I do want to say I don't think what they did to Trump was right, nor do I think it's ethical, right? I think the ethics of it is something that I think is highly questionable. It shows you the power of social media, right? They've essentially erased them from the internet. I think that's wrong, and I think that's something that we have to settle. Maybe the answer would be having the government set up its own, public square Twitter, because the government can easily do that, right? They can set up a website, set up Twitter, then have free speech, right? But they choose not to do that, right? So since they don't do that, you can't now force a private industry to do what the government chooses not to do. You know what I mean?
Right. And that was also something that came up in the Senate hearing with Frances Haugen, was that apparently there are a couple legislative bills that are in the works that may get some traction, who knows? But one of them is to modify Section 230 and to put more due process protections in there, which is something that I feel like I've talked about quite a bit. Something that would give a certain amount of transparency, right? To say that if Facebook or Twitter, if they if they take an action against you, they moderate your content and you disagree with that, to give you a process where you can say, you know what, I disagree. And I would like to see, my voice be heard on this issue, that I really want, someone to actually, work through this objectively and determine whether or not I should actually be banned according to, the terms and conditions that are put out there, that I know of ahead of time, that I can plan for, that haven't changed on me, et cetera, et cetera. So, because a lot of these terms of service, they're written so broadly also that nobody, first of all, most people don't even read them. But second, even if people do, they're written so broadly that pretty much anything that Twitter or Facebook or YouTube deems offensive is going to get you kicked off. And you have no say in that.
Well, I think it's even more broad than that. I think it's so broad that even if you don't do anything on Twitter or on YouTube, you can still get kicked off of Twitter and YouTube, right? And Twitch, right? So people think it's only the content that I do on YouTube. No, YouTube has matter of fact, they've done it like 5 different people, but the most recent is R. Kelly. R. Kelly has been banned from YouTube. All his material has been banned from you. Now, obviously, you have other channels who have his music up, but R. Kelly was banned from YouTube, and he violated none, absolutely zero of YouTube's policies. He violated it's proven that he violated none of their what's it called, their now I can't say the word, what's it called, the community guidelines. Like, he did nothing. But because he was convicted in court for this, they were able to ban him. And then YouTube had that video where they came out and said, yes, if you're a content creator or have a YouTube channel and you've done something off platform that we think is bad for the YouTube brand, we will cast you out. So, so I understand people want to make this distinction and saying, well, they should look to see what's going on and give me a chance. But I think that's also a violation of the Constitution, right? Because of the freedom of association, right? Because of your freedom to associate with other people and your freedom to not associate with someone. Just imagine if I say, I don't want to talk to you, Alita, anymore. And then the government says, well, you got to give Alita due process rights. Did she do something? It's like, no, like, I don't have to do that, right? I am not the government. The due process rights that you have are against government contact, not particularly with me. So I don't know how they're going to get over that, because again, let's not, I hate to say this, but YouTube is protected by the Constitution, just like we are, just in a different way.
Right. Well, the way that I look at that though, that the way that these social media companies and internet providers, et cetera, that is different, in my opinion, than your average person walking down the street, is the fact that they have, Congress can also tie certain benefits to certain strings, right? That's like anytime. anytime they give any kind of funding, like to schools, for example, they can tie that funding to certain strings that schools need to do certain things, to maintain certain standards or whatever. But Congress does that all the time. So if Congress gives a certain benefit, like this liability protection, they can also have a string attached to that and say, okay, but along with that is going to be, you have to give a certain amount of due process, protections to people with these moderation practices.
Yeah. Oh, but
So.
There's a case that happened in, not in this particular context, but the civil rights cases. I usually bring this up, the civil rights cases of the 1800s, right after the Civil War. The first Civil Rights Act, not the one in the 60s, but the one in the 1800s. Right after the Civil War ended, they passed the civil rights laws internationally. And it was more or less an anti-defamation. An anti-discrimination law that said, private parties could not discriminate against, on the basis of race. So especially in accommodations, hotels, things, those type of things. But the Supreme Court rejected that, right? They said, and the government was saying, well, we're able to do this not only under the 14th Amendment, but because these businesses, hotels and stuff, are licensed and all that stuff, and because they have these whole things, we can use this carrot and stick. But the Supreme Court came back and said, no, you can't do it that way. And the reason why you can't do it is because the Constitution specifically only allows this type of thing. It's against, you have to have state action, you have to have government action to have to protect people from those rights, right? The hotel can't violate your constitutional rights because they're not the government. But then in the 60s, under the Civil Rights Amendment, what they did, not the civil rights, under the 1960s civil rights laws, what they did, they coasted under the Commerce Clause. They were saying, well, we're regulating commerce. And to regulate commerce, now these people who are interacting in interstate commerce can't discriminate. So they achieved the same result, but use the different law. Now, I'm thinking this could be used in a different context here, where you're saying, internet and social media is obviously interstate commerce. And if you use maybe that argument that, hey, since we're talking about interstate commerce, we're going to regulate and say you can't discriminate, like you were saying in Section 230, and maybe make it a little stronger. But I still think there are arguments to be made on both sides. I would rather see them more regulated, but I would want to see how they get around it. Are they going to implement the Commerce Clause? Or are they not? It's just interesting to see. Yeah.
So I definitely agree, and I think it's going to be very, very interesting, and especially because something that I hadn't really thought about here in the context of these social media platforms was watching the 60 Minutes interview with Frances Haugen. She was talking about how the social media companies are similar in a way right now to the tobacco companies before they were regulated, that they couldn't, they became regulated in their marketing and all that kind of stuff, that, because before it was just, you could sell to kids, you could market to kids, all that kind of stuff. And not just children, but, there are all kinds of regulations now around the tobacco industry that didn't used to be there because they just wouldn't regulate themselves. And so Congress, stepped in. And this is something that often happens, right? When you have a particular industry that has, some kind of a problem comes up, and Congress says, either you regulate yourself or we're going to do it for you. Like this happened with the video game industry, right? Like that's how the ESRB was developed. That was a very interesting bit of history that I learned over the last year or so ish. That was what, there was new video games were getting better and better. Of course, nowadays we look back on those from the 90s that they're all pixelated and whatnot, but they were talking about how there was this growing concern around video games specifically for violence, that they were causing kids to be more violent, or they were experiencing more violence by playing these games, and so there were a ton of congressional hearings. They brought in all of the big video game companies, the CEOs, in front of Congress, similar to the tech industry today, bringing them in before Congress to talk about this issue, and they said, hey guys, either Nintendo, Sega, et cetera, if you guys don't figure out how to regulate yourselves, we're going to do it for you. And for the video game industry, they actually ended up figuring out on their own how to regulate themselves. So that was very interesting. But it's from what Frances Haugen is saying. She's saying that's really not possible with these social media companies, because their incentives are just completely misaligned. And I don't know. I mean, I would be curious to see if they could regulate themselves by creating an entity like that.
Well, the thing is that what you're talking about has been done in the movie industry, right? Those ratings, those R ratings, the R ratings. That's self-regulation in the movie industry. The comic book industry, a lot of people don't know this. They also did the self-regulations with in the comic book industry. They had the little stickers, and in the music industry, if you know the little black explicit warning labels on it, they even do it. So that's generally what happens in these artistic industries. Is that eventually Congress, somebody will get mad, like for the comics, for instance, and this is. I'm going to try to say it so you won't get demonetized here. Batman and Robin. Back in the 50s, they were concerned that, Batman and Robin were great, but they didn't hang out with enough women, right? they were too friendly with each other. So, and that was one of the things, and the costumes for the cartoon characters were too sexualized and things of that nature. So then they said, well, we're going to have this now new. So the comic book industry said, well, we're going to create a committee that are going to review the comics and then give them labels to determine if they're good enough to go out. Same thing with the movie industry. Movies got it going crazy. Then they were like, well, how are we going to regulate this? Because it's free speech. And then the movie industry came out with their rating system, PG-13 and so forth and so forth. And now with TV, the TV shows, if you see those little ratings on top of the TV shows, that's another form of self-regulation. So that's generally the way. And I'm not sure if social media could do that, but I think that's an easier way if you can get them to self-regulate versus trying to go the legal route, because you never know what the courts are going to do in that situation. So and I think one of the problems here is, like, one of the things that she was highlighting was the fact that they have the research, they've done the research, and they know exactly how damaging their algorithms are, the way that they're set up. Right. That they actually are set up to stoke more hate, stoke more violence, stoke misinformation, and that they don't care because that's better for their bottom line, and on the same token, she also talks about Instagram and how their algorithm is set up so that, teenage girls get, swept into, these issues with, like, images of their bodies, that they become depressed. They get, issues with body dysmorphia, and that it's exactly those emotions that suck them right into the app. And it's like a self-feeding cycle that keeps them on the platform. But I think that's more of the parents' fault than Facebook's fault, right? It's like there are things out there that are very addictive for children, for anybody, right? For instance, caffeine and Coca-Cola. They found that that's extremely addictive, right? The caffeine in it is extremely addictive, and cigarettes and so forth. But but if you as a parent are allowing your children unfettered access to Instagram, you're not explaining to them what's going on. Hey, that's all surgery. That woman went for surgery. She that type of thing, or explain to them the rationale behind it. Then you're right. I think Facebook, for having a good product, because that's what business is. Let's just not, I want to compel you to buy my product, and I want you to feel like, like you need it. It's funny. I remember back in the day for cell phones. I remember a time when a cell phone wasn't necessary. I remember a time when you didn't need a cell phone. Think about how far we've come, right? Because they've made it so essential in your life that I was doing some work here. I do just so everybody understands. So I do some outreach work. Sometimes I go to a church and do things with homeless people. So I'll help, I help them fill out forms, get things of that nature. So that's some things I do. And that's why sometimes when you see my case, like the case in the New York Times, it's something very similar where, I just help people who don't have enough. So there was one gentleman who came, when we were there, we were helping them fill out stuff. I'm trying to help them get vaccinated and things of that nature. So one of the gentlemen came there, and he was supposed to call before, but he didn't call. And we were asking, like, hey, what happened? You come every week, you didn't call. And it's interesting. He said that he lost his phone, and he had a big, like, this huge tablet with him. So he's like, what are you doing with the tablet? He had to carry the tablet around because if he didn't have the tablet, he couldn't make phone calls. He couldn't connect to anything. Most of the jobs that he had to apply for were online. So he could take the tablet into the subway and they had free Wi-Fi. So that's what he would do. And he had to stay in the subway all day so he could just stay in communication with the outside world until he got another free phone. And that shows you how now even people who are homeless need cell phones to live. And that's where we were at, not needing a cell phone at all to now needing one to live in the real world. So, we're soon going to be connected into the matrix. I'm assuming.
I know it's between that and the more that I learn about NFTs, I feel like we are either entering into the matrix or we are entering into like Ready Player One, where people are just like constantly connected and living in this online world, right?
Oh yeah. Nope. Because this is the way we communicate now. We don't. Most people aren't. Well, now since you can't go out to bars, most people can't go out to bars and stuff. So we communicate. This is the way we find our friends. This is how we express intellectual curiosity all through this medium. Right. So I think it's very powerful. It's very powerful today, and I think people are just realizing how powerful it is. And think about this: if they can just kick the president of the United States off the internet overnight, we got no shot. You know what I'm saying? We have no shot.
I know. Well, and that's something that I think is a very interesting part of the argument by Trump's legal team, is that they say that the argument for why Trump was kicked off, Twitter came out with a statement, right, and said that the reason why he was kicked off was because, his words were inciting violence, or they had a high likelihood of inciting further violence, and they were glorifying violence, right? And so in this particular filing, I guess, they said that they were like, well, that's all BS because the Taliban is on Twitter, and the Taliban's there, and they're glorifying violence because they're talking, they're tweeting about their successes in taking over Afghanistan, right? And so they're like, that's BS, which I think that I logically agree. I think that is an example of the inconsistency in application of their platform. And one of the, I know, sorry, I think we're both having
no, my camera thing fell in it is the focus thing, so I had to refocus.
Yeah, no, I think apparently I'm coming in 240p. I'm sorry, Eldon paneling.
You're on a dial-up modem right now.
Oh, geez. I don't know how.
You've been in dial-up mode for the past 40 minutes. If you guys
no. I'm sorry, guys. I can see myself clearly, but sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on with that because I'm on Ethernet. I don't know, but
well, you should. Well, if you go, it's probably too late now. But if you go to camera and mic, you could change your bandwidth. Go to camera and then this is camera resolution and lower it, and then it should come out. It should be better.
Camera. Okay, advanced options. Lower it to standard instead of high?
Yeah. Oh. And it should come out clear.
See if that works. Oh, whoa. That's weird.
Nope, it's too big. But there you go. You're back. Now it looks great. Now you're
yes?
back. Now you're great.
Oh, good. Okay, cool.
Now you're in HD.
Oh man. So yeah. So the argument that they have is that, obviously there's an inconsistency in the way that they're applying these terms of service because because the Taliban is allowed to tweet about their glorifications of violence and whatnot because of their successes in Afghanistan, which I do think that that does show an inconsistency with the platform. And I think that if there was a requirement that Twitter apply their terms of service equally across the board, then yeah, that would be a great argument. But unfortunately, under the law, there is no requirement that they be held to that.
Yeah, I think that the Taliban thing is something that Twitter is definitely going to have to figure out. Like, why do we still let the Taliban, do this? But again, it's just like, I just don't know how it works. But I think that's an issue. But again, it's like what's legal and lawful here in the United States versus what's legal and lawful in Afghanistan. So it's like, just because I do something here in the United States because I don't like, because that population doesn't like it, I don't think it's going to be the same in China. So it may be that type of thing. Well, we operate in Afghanistan, and that's the people who run Afghanistan. Thank you, Joe Biden. So that kind of, I think, manipulates that piece of it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. And I had some kind of a thought just now about something that Frances Haugen said that was related to that I can't remember at the moment, but maybe I'll think of it. But yeah, I mean, did you happen to see any of her comments that she made either on 60 Minutes or
yeah, I watched Viva's thing about it, and I saw some of the comments, but the issue seems to be, and this is the one thing that bothers me with this whole Facebook thing, is that it's all seems to be focused in on one side of the political spectrum and not both sides. And what I mean by that is the left is allowed to lie, manipulate, and say all the stuff that's incorrect, and they're never demonetized, and never. It's like I've said, I watch both the left and the right, and the left outright lies. U.S. women's soccer. What's the other thing? Breonna Taylor. There's so many things that it's just straight up lies.
Oh, the kid in D.C. that was from Ohio or whatever.
Yeah, Nick Sandmann.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Where he was actually able to sue for defamation.
Outright lie.
Yeah. And they're allowed to do that and to just say it, and there's no consequences, right? But then if someone in the right says something, it's like, well, this is a disinformation campaign and we got to stop it altogether. And and this is where I think it's starting to become the whole, well, you can't sit there and be the arbiter of truth and then let one side spew lies because you it's not bad lies, but then the other side spew lies and you crack down. You've got to be some balance here.
Right. And I mean, I think another thing is and that you're touching on that's really important is that who then decides what is true and what is false. And also, there's often not a very bright line in the sand as to what is true or false, because you can have a statement that is largely opinion, that is partially true, partially false. How then do statements like that get determined one way or another, right? Because there are so many pitfalls with trying to have one central authority on what is true and what is false, and it starts to sound like communism, to be completely honest with you.
I think you're right, but I think we do have obviously with R. Kelly, for instance, I hate even bringing him up, continue to bring him up, but with him, they waited until he was convicted. Right. And there was no doubt. He has all the evidence, everything was seen, an arbiter of fact. The jury figured it all out and said he's guilty of doing these crimes. He's gone. Right. He's gone.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Now, people who say he's innocent or anything like that, I think now you're being factually incorrect because a court found him. So that's why. And I think facts matter. Right. I think particularly U.S. soccer, for instance, which I hate to bring up this time. But even that, factually, they were paid more. Right. So now if TYT goes and says factually they were paid less, that's a lie. That's incorrect. It's incorrect based on the evidence. Right. The evidence that both sides agrees to. So that's what I'm saying. It's not determining, it's not determining subjective facts, but things that are objectively real that we can all kind of figure out that, hey, you know what? This makes sense. This is not true based on the facts of the matter.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, and so what you're pointing out too, is that, when we're talking about Section 230, there are two sides to Section 230, two concerns that it really tries to balance. And those are the two concerns that, depending on if you are a Democrat or a Republican, that you are concerned about most likely. There's the misinformation aspect, and then there's the free speech aspect. And both of those were concerns going into, hold on a second. I'm sorry. Indy. Sorry, she's making some noises.
It's okay.
So those are two concerns that were very apparent at the time that Section 230 was entered into, and those are the concerns that people are talking about most right now as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, at the time also there was defamation, but that was kind of gone. That went with misinformation, I would say. But but so now, a lot of the conversation is about misinformation. Like that's the big danger here, right? But at the same time, we also can't forget that on the other hand, we also have that concern of free speech that people have, on these platforms, and determining, like who gets to determine what expressions are valid or invalid. Like those are all really big concerns. But something that I think was promising was the fact that at the hearing that Frances Haugen testified at, both sides of the political spectrum were very interested in hearing her testimony, and they were both alarmed at the things that she was saying, and hopefully it means that I'm always very hopeful. Maybe I'm a little bit naive in that respect, but I'm always hopeful that the two sides can find that middle ground, right? Because we're talking about some very real problems that everyone seems to kind of agree that there are issues here, right? That there are problems, depending on what side the political spectrum you're on. You might see one issue being more of a problem than the other, but yes.
Yeah, but see, I think the biggest issue is that these are private companies, and I think it's hard for me to get over that fact, because right now we're talking about scale, like when I know there's some people out there who says, well, Twitter is a public square. No, that's just not true. They're not a public square. It's a private, just like MySpace when it was up big. It's not the public square, right? These and anybody can make one of these, and these internet companies, anybody can go back and create the what Twitter has in a rudimentary way. MySpace, for instance, is still out there. So it's hard for me to agree to forcing private companies to do something in this business, because I'm a capitalist. I believe in capitalism. I believe in the free market. And I believe the free market dictates what happens. And when we start to get to the point to force companies to do certain things, then it's just as in a legal sense, I don't think that's appropriate. But I do think it's inappropriate to regulate certain companies with that sticking carrot mentality that you said. If you're going to have these privileges, then here are some of the things that we would expect you to do for that. I think that's appropriate. But to what level, I just don't know.
Yeah. No, I definitely would agree with that. So on that note, I think we have probably reached our time ending. Unless there's anything else that you wanted to say.
No. I'm good. I'm just doing some videos this week. What do you got coming up? I got some videos I'm coming up this week.
So I've got one that I've been editing for a while, and I've been trying to get out, talking about copyrights of architecture, specifically talking about the Tower of Terror, because there was a video that came out, several years ago, an engineer that was talking about how it works, and then some of his drawings were used by a show that's on Disney Plus, and so there was a question of whether or not those are copyright protected. And so I have a video that hopefully I can get it out at some point soon, talking about the various rights around copyright specifically for architecture, and some of the issues that can come up with that. So I think it's fascinating. I think it's interesting, and hopefully other people will too. But before that, like I mentioned before, my husband and I are gonna do a live tweeting if anybody's interested in watching my husband, hit his head against a door. Or metaphorically speaking, through some tweets. We'll see.
That's gonna be funny. Oh my god! No, well, hopefully it sounds like it's gonna be. It sounds like it's gonna be. Is it gonna be on this channel? Or are you gonna put it up here?
So it's gonna be on my Twitter profile. Okay. So if you guys follow us on Twitter, then or follow me on Twitter on Legalbytes Media, you can find it there, and see if you agree or disagree with either me or my husband. So yeah, that's good.
That's gonna be good. That's gonna be good. Well, I know for me, I got 3 videos in the can. I got, obviously, so people know, we just did a U.S. soccer breakdown of LFG, the movie, Mia, Lita, Viva, and Legal Mindset, right? Yeah. So we did a review of that, so that's going to be coming out pretty soon. Hopefully you guys will like us breaking down. We go over their legal arguments. That's going to be good.
Yes.
Hopefully we'll see.
Talking about the beauty that is the LFG documentary,
Yes.
beautiful piece of hard-hitting journalistic work by CNN Films.
Yeah, that's that's gonna be crazy. Also, the upcoming Supreme Court calendar has like so many great cases that are going to that I think is going to change the way we live in America. And I think a lot of people don't realize how important the case is coming up for everything from gun rights to abortion. Like the Supreme Court really has some real hard hitting cases that I think even religious liberties is on the docket for this term. So
I think we should, if we can, we should probably get Kurt together again and do another reaction live stream of oral arguments like we did for the cheerleader case. That was fun.
Yeah, well, I thought I know we were planning on doing that for the soccer one too. So hopefully, we should pick out one of these ones because there's like 5 or 6 of them. But I'm doing a video on the ones that I think are most compelling. So those hopefully that'll be hopefully we can pick one out because there are so many fascinating ones. I'm talking about from executions to it's interesting stuff. The last thing, and the NBA players and 2 other ones, the NBA players obviously being indicted. That's 18 NBA players for welfare fraud, which is kind of crazy. The last thing is, what else did I have coming up? I have one last thing coming up for let me look. Executive privilege. See, I think a lot of people don't understand executive privilege. So I was gonna just explain that out to people so they can understand what executive privilege is.
Yes. Yeah. I think yeah.
So
I think that'll be interesting.
Well, we'll see. That's more of a law nerd stuff, but hopefully I can get all those things out. But it's going to be it's an interesting week and it's an interesting time for law because don't forget you still have those sort of Britney Spears stuff too at the end too, right?
Sorry, I just got a little distracted by the chat. Sorry, ask that again.
No, I said we have a lot of interesting law stuff that's been coming down the pipe for the past 2 weeks, so it's kept us busy. So
yes, it has. Britney Spears especially has been giving us a lot of great material, and I am looking forward to a time when she doesn't give us any material because that will mean that her life is finally quiet, right? And that hopefully she's gotten to the place where she wants to be and where she's happy and secure and all that kind of stuff. But it looks like things are moving in a good direction for her life. So hopefully that does continue. And I mean, I love diversifying the content here. So I'll be happy to also talk about other stuff, right?
Oh yeah. But that's what we do. And congratulations on going over 6K. So it's like you're going over 1,000 like every week. It's like 5K, and it's like 4, 5, and 6. So
I know. It's in the last like week or so. It's slowed down a little bit, but I think that I think it's gonna probably pick up again sometime soon. So looking forward to it.
It's the ups and downs of this whole YouTube game, and it's tough. It's tough. A lot of people don't know how tough it is to research this stuff and to put it, because don't forget, a lot of this stuff is so dry. Like executive privilege is so dry and boring. I'm surprised anybody even has any concerns about it. But to what me and Legalbytes do, putting these things in digestible chunks, explaining it out, it's a tough job. But somebody's got to do it. So
yeah. So Eldon Banling, this actually, oddly enough, is not my first chat troll.
Oh, who's your first chat troll?
Oh, well, it's funny because this one seems to be a bit on the left, saying that I'm too far on the, oh my goodness. Hi. Hello. Hi. A little bit too far on the right, but previously I've gotten comments from someone who had left multiple comments on other videos saying that I was too far to the left. So, I mean, who knows? I'm either too far to the left, too far to the right. Maybe that's exactly where I want to be, right?
You know what? I find that people just want accurate reporting on facts. If you give your opinion, just be out honestly and explain that it's your opinion. Like, and a lot of times when you're in these silos of only people on the right or only people on the left, they kind of fear of giving you the full story because they want to continue to keep you on their side. But and I think as legal commentators, we don't have that fear, right? The law is the law, no matter how you feel about it. It's just whether you accept the law is what it is and how to change it, right? Because I like right now I have a lot of people who are coming to me about the vaccination issue, right? A lot of people are saying they don't want to get vaccinated and their job is giving them a limited amount of time to get vaccinated or be fired. And one of the implications is that they can't get unemployment. So a lot of people don't understand, if you're not vaccinated and their job lets you go, people are assuming they can get unemployment. Well, the state came out and said, no, you will not be able to get unemployment. It's you're it's going to be treated as if you left your job, willfully. That sucks. That sucks.
Yeah,
and I know it sucks. But the courts have all come down one way. It's a very hard hill to climb. I know one person was saying, I was reading one argument in New York, and they were saying, well, they have a religious exemption against the vaccine, right? Their religion doesn't allow them to take vaccines. But come to find out, they took every other vaccine, right? They have every other vaccine in their body. So then it's like, well, we're not going to give you one religious exemption. Yeah.
The thing is, it has to be a bona fide restriction, right? A bona fide limitation on things that you can do because of your religion. So so evidence showing that you have also taken other vaccines, that would seem to suggest that no, you don't have a religious restriction from taking vaccines. So.
And people can change their religious, ideologies, and
Absolutely.
Hey, I did before and afterwards. But then you're gonna have to show that with some facts and circumstances, and it's just gonna be tough. So I really I've been working with some people. Matter of fact, a politician reached out to me. But the interesting part about it is that.
Was it Viva? I'm just kidding.
Oh no. It's I'll say this. This is a far left-wing politician who's concerned about it, because like in New York, we have one of our judges who's a far left-wing judge who refuses to take the shot. So this isn't really a political thing, which the news media is trying to push on you. This is really just people on the left and people on the right are all concerned about this vaccine, which I think they should be. But whether their legal arguments are good enough or not, that's what I like to go into. So
yes, no, absolutely, and that's the thing is that for us, it seems second nature, because in order to do our jobs, we have to be able to confront the opposing side, right? We have to just say, win by having a better argument that is decidedly better, based on something that an objective third party decided, so for us, like, having to confront the other side, having to sit with an opposing idea it's kind of after a certain point, it's second nature. So I definitely see the value of, obviously, just like you do, of surrounding yourself with various opinions. Like I have friends that are staunch Republicans that are, very much politically active in DC. Great friends. On the other hand, I also have great friends that are as progressive as you can possibly get, like really as progressive as you can possibly get. And I love them all. So, being able to be friends with people of all stripes is something that is not always the easiest, but I think that it's important to try to keep yourself as grounded as possible. And so sometimes I, I'll get criticism from trolls, either, thinking that I'm a super rightist hack or a super leftist hack, for pretending to be on the right. I don't know why anyone would pretend to be on the right in social media, because you have a much greater likelihood of getting shut down if you're on the right.
We are not ideologues in terms of, we've kind of followed the evidence, looked at every situation is different. Sometimes, like for instance, Second Amendment, I'm pro Second Amendment, right? Abortion, I'm pro-abortion. I'm pro-abortion, or pro women's right to choose, however you want to say it. So for each situation, I kind of evaluate it in its own cyclone and say, okay, well, how do I feel about this situation? But right now, if you have an R behind your name, you have to accept all the stuff that they say. Climate change isn't real. No, I think it is real. But I don't think, but then I don't think this other part is real, So there are certain things from the Republicans and from the conservatives I like. There's certain things from the Democrats that I like, and I put it together and I become me. And I say, well, and then my thing before I have to go, my thing for everybody who watches my channel or who wants to interact with me is that I don't care what you believe. I really care about why you believe or why you're coming to that conclusion.
Right.
And I'll tell you why
agree.
I'm coming to that conclusion. And if you
Yes.
believe that my reasons are bad, I'll explain to me why my reasons, and we can agree to disagree. But I will give you, here are the reasons that I voted for this person. Here are the reasons why I didn't vote for this person, or here are the reasons why I'm coming to this conclusion. And that's the
Yes.
conversation. The conversation isn't the conclusion. It's about how we got there.
Yes. I couldn't agree more, because how you arrive there, I think is probably more important than the actual conclusion that you get to. Like if I reach a certain conclusion and someone shows me that the conclusion that I got to was not based entirely on evidence, not based entirely on good information, then that calls for a re-examination of that conclusion. That's just, in my opinion, the way that should be. And we've talked about this before too, about, the ability to change your opinion on something like that, it can be a very difficult thing, but I think that it makes it much easier when you don't over identify with your ideas. You are not your opinions. You are not your conclusions. You are not your political stances. You can change your mind on a certain issue, on a certain topic, and still be you, and still be completely you. You can be wrong about something and still be completely whole. You will be okay. So,
hey, yeah. You're preaching to the choir. So with that said,
yep. With all that said, I just thank you so much to everybody that showed up and watched. I mean, we had over I think peak viewers was over 100 people for sure. So that's very exciting for me. So I appreciate everybody coming to watch, and people being, engaging in the chat and liking the video. And, if you guys are enjoying this, share it around if you want. And if you're new here, subscribe to the channel. And if you haven't subscribed to Nate's channel, be sure to subscribe over there at the Nate the Lawyer is the name of your channel, of course. And otherwise on Locals. So yeah, Locals, Twitter, Instagram, all those places. So I'm about to hop on Twitter and see if we can convince my husband to like the MCU. Okay. All right. And with that, that's everything. We'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.